Good morning. We have another great week ahead of us, and I hope that you are already up and getting going. And this morning we're going to be in 1 Samuel 15, and I believe this will help you if you'll pay attention to it and apply it to maybe your own weaknesses. Saul had a tendency to do almost what God had asked for him. He obeyed most of what he was told to do. He had some areas where he didn't obey at all, but what usually made the difference was the crowd around him. And so in this particular circumstance, Saul had a sequence of disobediences that don't seem like that big of a deal, really, if you think about it. I mean, Samuel told him, "I'll come and we'll make the sacrifices before you go to battle." And Samuel was the latest he could be and still be considered within the framework of when he said. And Saul looked at the people, saw the people starting to get a little antsy, starting to scatter, and so he took care of the sacrifices himself, which is against the law. The king is not the one that gives the sacrifices. Only the priests, only the prophets, only the ones that were sanctioned can be the ones to do that. And Samuel was a priest, so he was the one that could. And he said he would, and he came just in time to do it, but Saul had already done it. And then he was told to go do something specific. God had specifically marked a group of people who were very ruthless to his people for a day later where they'll have to pay for it. And Saul was the one that was going to administer that payment, that payback from the Lord on behalf of his people. And he only did parts of it. In fact, he looked like he was doing something and said, "Hey, well, I know God said to do this, but isn't this a better thing? And we'll do this sacrifice." So listen to these two verses, and these verses are able to be applied throughout time. Here it goes. Verse number 22 in 1 Samuel 15, it says, "And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrificing as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken, that means to listen to the Lord and with an intent to do, hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft." So you can see that he equated rebellion into disobedience. Any kind of disobedience. Rebellion is when I don't do what I was told. Our kids are considered rebellious if we tell them this is the way we're going to do it, and they flat out refuse and go their own way. Look at this next word. "And stubbornness as as iniquity," which is wrong, all wrongdoing, and idolatry, self-worship, or worship of God, false gods. "Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king." And so our punishment is not going to be that we're not going to be a king anymore, because most of us aren't kings or queens or whatever. So he says, "Hey, I'm going to remove your authority because you decided that maybe I'd be happier with sacrifices instead of obedience." And so God is telling us today, and really for all of us, obey even in what seems like the little things, because what Saul does here doesn't seem like they're that big of a deal. They don't seem like kingdom-ending things, but there was a sequence of life or a way of living where it was half obedience and half-hearted fellowship or following of the Lord. And so God said, "Okay, I've had enough. You're going to lose the kingdom now." And so I want us to recognize that obedience is better than sacrifices. Obedience is even better than worship. But don't misunderstand, because obedience, an obedient person worships more completely. And so I want to encourage you today, start off your week looking to the Word of God and saying, "Okay, God, where am I not obeying you? Where have I just kind of dismissed your command as something that's kind of optional?" And get those things right. Obey the Lord. He will bless the obedient. And I want to encourage you, that's the best way to live is with God's favor and his blessing and his look at you as if you are doing well as one of his kids. So I hope that helps you get your week off to a great start.